quarter of Republicans believe that there is a high-level satanic pedophile sex cult in the Democratic Party. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a QAnoner. She believed in the Hawaiian Jewish space lasers. Like, do you acknowledge either of those things are true? That a quarter of conservatives.
I admire Marjorie Taylor Greene a lot. I think she cares deeply about.
Do you acknowledge that Marjorie Taylor Greene was a QAnoner? You have to live in the same reality.
It's like, I admire you so much. I want to hear everything you have to say. I want to have this conversation with you, but I am destroying America because I don't agree with you about something like,
it's because we are having core fundamental value disagreements.
Don't be depressed.
It's depressing. It's horrible. The conservatives have no standard for behavior in this country. But you're okay with that.
I'm a leftist.
Wait.
There was no way I was not going to join this because I guess the only accurate way to say it is existential levels of gratitude to you, because you have been such a voice of moral clarity in a space where that is very difficult at a time when very few had that clarity in the space that you're in. And I think I and a lot of people, American Jews feel like your moral clarity was a lifesaver.
This is about Israel-Palestine stuff?
Yeah, just...
Okay, gotcha.
But in general, just like, at a time when it's like everything is either at heightened levels of irony or moral relativism, like for somebody to just say, actually, like the difference between right and wrong exists, and I'm just gonna operate from that point of view, it's... Like, as an American, I feel like that's what patriotism looks like today. And like, you and I may not agree on a lot of things, but in my mind, like, my America has to have you in it. Like, if I can't come up with a we or like an e pluribus unum vision of America that doesn't include somebody like you, I'm failing. So all of which is to say, I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you so much for having me and for everything that you do.
Well, thank you so much. That's going to make the rest of this conversation very interesting, I guess. Yeah. I saw, I'm going to be completely and totally honest. I saw that you had a video that was starting to blow up on Twitter and I think on YouTube about Trump derangement syndrome, which is something we talk about a lot on my stream because I am a obsessive Trump hater. Okay. I'm Trump's #1 anti-fan. But I just found out today that there's a bunch of weird stuff going on at Twitch. If you guys are bored, you should cover it. A lot of weird anti-Semitic stuff. We just found out that Twitch has had a geolocation ban on Israel for over a year for making new accounts. It was very strange. So we've been like,
what?
Yeah, we've been covering like a lot of weird stuff going on.
Oh my God.
Today and the past few days. So I did. So that all that said to have the excuse of I was going to watch the video to prep and I didn't have time to do it. So if you could, do you want to catch people up to who you are, I guess what that video was about, and then we could have a chat, yeah.
Sure. I don't walk around calling people like, you have Trump derangement syndrome, you have Trump derangement syndrome. That video there was another guy at the Free Press where I have a show who is a self-described Trump derangement syndrome haver. Mm-hmm. So he wouldn't say like you, I'm a hater of Trump. He comes out and says, I have Trump derangement syndrome. So he was going to write a piece about it. And so they invited me to have him on the show to try to sort of help him through it. And so we did we started it with a kind of funny opening, there's a disease afflicting many of our fellow Americans, blah, blah, blah. But it was a joke. I mean, I obviously think there are many legitimate reasons not to like Trump. I respect many of them. I don't respect all of them. But I would never say to somebody like, I think you're deranged for not liking this person, not voting for this person. The video was my attempt to sort of make him feel a little bit better, to sort of say like, well, given everything that I think you believe, here are the sort of 3 objections people seem to have to Trump. And here would be my way of addressing those sort of 3 objections. And so we went through them one by one. And at the end, he was like, well, I still hate him, but I do feel a little bit better. And I think that was sort of my goal was, to explain to him something that I think is very mysterious to people who truly hate Trump, who don't have people in their lives who really like him, which is how could so many people like this person so much? So, and I think that, for people who truly love this country, though I think you do, people who are true patriots, like people want to understand how the other side sees things. Like I encounter that a lot as well on the right. Like people want to understand their fellow Americans. I think it's only the people in the elites who make money off of division and divisiveness who really don't want to understand. They want to believe that everybody on the other side is either a racist or, a groomer, right? Or whatever it is. But I think average people, like, really want to understand how their fellow Americans think. And when they get a reasonable explanation for why millions of people disagree with them on an issue, it actually is like you do feel a relief. Like you feel like, oh, that's what it's about. So that's what the video was about. And I don't think I convinced him about anything, but I think I did make him feel a little bit better.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Um, Man. Okay, so well, where to go from here? Um, I do you? How much time do you
Is
have?
that not what you were expecting? Why did you invite me? I should ask. Like, well, I know
Well,
why
now I
I'm
wish you
here.
would have watched the video. So I personally, I think that Trump and the movement that he represents is an existential threat to the United States and the stability of our democracy. I think that content creators that have been involved in supporting him, I think are, if they're not criminals, they're as close to that line as possible. I think that there's been an unprecedented wave of hateful anti-American rhetoric, anti-patriotic rhetoric, self-destructive rhetoric that has come from Trump and then his allies and then that side in an unprecedented way that isn't even close to mirrored on the other side. So obviously a lot of conservatives that I argue with would call me a deranged Trump hater. But then when I try to get into the weeds on any of these particular factors, they can rehearse. They have like a few rehearsed Trump talking points, and then they just completely and immediately fall apart, and it's very, very, very frustrating to me. So that question that you also I rebel a lot. If I ever say anything, you want to cut me off immediately, say something. The thing that you mentioned for the guy, or the thing that you mentioned about wanting to understand the other side, or figuring out like, well, what is it? What's driving the difference between both people? Just as a real quick thing, my mom is from Cuba. And my dad is from Kentucky. I grew up very conservative, very Republican. So if you ask me like, well, what does a conservative or a Republican think? I think I can tell you pretty easily like where the feelings and the beliefs and the opinions and everything come from, especially around moral issues like pro-life and anti-gay marriage. I understand that very well. I went to a Catholic school for up through high school. For the current iteration of this like post-Tea Party MAGA movement, my answer is it exclusively almost is powered by conservative disinformation. And I think it's destroying the country. I think the movement is unsalvageable, and I think that we're like on a path to destruction if we keep pretending that both sides are even remotely the same on this issue. And then, yeah, go for it.
Um, you grew up poor also, right?
I grew up upper middle class until I was around 13, and then my mom quit her job for reasons, and then we were kind of financially screwed for about 5 years, and then I was financially screwed for about a year, and then I got into streaming very luckily. So I've had my ups and downs.
Um, so the perspective I'm coming at this from is I wrote two books and both of them are kind of about the same thing, which is that the real divide in America is not actually right versus left. It's the class divide. It's about whether you have a college degree or not, and that a lot of factors go into if you have that degree, you're much more likely to be able to achieve the American dream statistically, to be able to become a homeowner, to be able to retire in dignity. Your children will be upwardly mobile. But if you're working class, the way you were for many years, it's much more challenging. I mean, you have a genius for something that's very obvious, but for a lot of people who are doing sort of average jobs that really only need to be done, pretty well, the American dream is increasingly out of reach. So for my second book, I traveled around the country for about a year interviewing working class people from Democrat, Republican, both background, all religious backgrounds, all racial backgrounds, all family, gender, whatever. And what I found was actually very little distinguished working class people who voted for Democrats and working class people who voted for Republicans. And I can tell you a little bit more if it's interesting, like where they sort of, in general, sort of fall on the issues. There's a kind of weird consensus that's happened among people who don't have a college degree. The real polarization is between the elites on both sides. And I think a lot of the conservatives you're talking to are probably in that right wing elite that does get a lot of money and power out of polarization. But when you talk to average Americans, their views on policy, whether they vote for Republicans or Democrats, are very similar. So they're quite, well, left/protectionist on economic stuff. So your average Trump voter would want something like, universal health care, tariffs, They're not against government investment in people who are struggling. What they want really is an economy that supports their labor. But then also the Democrats who are working class want much less immigration. They're very worried about the transgender stuff and the woke stuff. So there's very little that sort of, I like after I wrote the book, I was sort of joking and I would, say like the first party that gets to, much more access to healthcare and much less immigration is going to get an immediate 60% of the vote because most Democratic working class people and most Republican working class people are there. And it's not just my interviews. I mean, I interviewed hundreds of people, but it's the polling shows that.
Uh-huh.
And so the argument I would make to you is I can show you how when you take the personality of Trump out of it, you just look at the policy agenda and you go like issue by issue. His policy, both what he enacted during his first term and the stuff that he talks about now is where most of those working class people are at. It's actually in that kind of moderate middle. He sounds a lot more like a Democrat from the 90s than he sounds like a Republican from the 2000s or then a Democrat from today sounds like a Democrat from the 90s. So we could go through that. But I think also even at a larger level, I totally respect and understand people who can't get past the character, who can't get past the shit talking, whatever. But I think even this question of whether you're casting your vote based on policy or based on character or sort of high level abstract ideas like democracy. I mean, of course you would say democracy is not an abstract idea, right? But even that decision, I think at the end of the day, today is going to come down to that class divide and whether an American, a person feels that they have the luxury of saying, I'm going to vote for the person who I feel makes me feel at an abstract level better, or I'm going to vote for the person who's just like, I have this feeling like they're going to be able to get the economy back to where it was in 2019 when working class people saw their first wage increases for the first time in 60 years and inflation was still low.
Sure. So, okay, how to start? There are things that I can kind of agree with, but I would say that these things are meaningless because I would say they're like second or third order. So I would say that like if I was to agree that Americans are having broad agreements around policy, it's only happening because on the first order or on a lower order, what their concept of policy is so far removed from the factual reality of whatever it is we're talking about. That like one of the issues that we're having right now is and I'm going to come back to this a lot, is that the right is involved in so much misinformation. It has destroyed our ability to have policy conversation. We don't do policy in the United States right now on the conservative side. It doesn't exist. And we can get into that deeper, but I would say that like a really good example of this has to do with, I would cite this example. I would say that probably the vast majority of Americans actually would agree on things like a vaccine mandate if we all agreed on the underlying facts. If I could show you that a vaccine was incredibly safe and that the disease had a high level of transmission and was incredibly lethal, I think almost everybody needs to be like, yeah, of course, everybody has to get vaccinated, right? I don't think that even though we're debating over lockdowns and whether we should do them or not, or debating over vaccines and whether or not we should mandate them or even offer them, I don't think the debate is really about those things. I think it's about the underlying facts that we believe to be true about those things. How am I going to convince somebody of a vaccine mandate if they think that, Bill Gates put microchips in the vaccine to make your fall off or something, right? That's not a real conversation. And then conversely, right, as an extension of that for this conversation, to say that, oh no, well, Americans do agree on this particular policy point. I don't even know what they think that policy means when they're from the right, especially from the right, and several orders of magnitude worse than from the left, when the misinformation machines that are being powered from Donald Trump from the top down are so powerful. They are destroying our ability to have a conversation in this country.
Okay, I'm not gonna like waste time being like, well, the Democrats also do misinformation. Like I'm sure, I'm sure there are things that Democrats have done that you would also be like, yeah, that's lame, but not as bad. So let's just set that aside, right? Because,
well, wait,
yeah.
I think that is probably my biggest pet peeve when I argue with a ton of people right now. So I don't think we should set that aside.
Oh, okay.
So as a quick thing, right? Are you familiar with the Fox News Dominion lawsuit?
Yeah.
Nothing on the left is even remotely close to that. Nothing, right? Would you agree with that? Or do you think there's something on the left that is like comparable to that? In
I do. Yeah. I would say that the sort of constant implication that Donald Trump was an illegitimate president, as Hillary Clinton put it, for the whole 4 years of his presidency, because he was a Putin plant. I think that that was incredibly divisive for the country.
Well,
Was
when I say comparable, I mean in terms of like just blatant lies, right? Like somebody could have that
well,
opinion, but the
well,
Dominion stuff was the all of the execs and all of the show hosts knew that they were lying, and they continued to do so because they didn't want to lose their audience to Newsmax and OAN.
well, if I recall correctly, it was only Maria Bartiromo and Tucker Carlson who were mentioned in this suit, and Tucker Carlson himself had Sidney Powell on and gave her a very vigorous. It was very interesting because he was named in the lawsuit, but his interview with Sidney Powell, he concluded there's no there, and he was literally saying to her, "I'm begging you to produce the evidence." Like, it's a 10-minute interview, and he concludes it, and then she signs off, and he says to the audience, "She did not produce it. We are waiting. If she wants to produce it, we'll have her back on." So it was really just the two hosts who were named, and one of them, I still to this day don't understand why he was named because he gave her actually the most vigorous interview she had outside of, CNN, MSNBC. I will say that, after the 2016 election, 66% of Democratic voters thought that Putin had actually intervened in the voting tallies to change the results of the election. So
But if we were to
yeah.
compare that, how many still believe? First of all, I don't know if I believe that first number, but let's say that that was true. How many believe that
Mhm.
now?
What do you mean? How many believe it
Well,
now?
because right now, like 80% plus of conservatives, by reputable polling, 80 plus percent of conservatives don't believe that the results of the last election are legitimate.
So we have 66 to 80. Okay,
Well, no,
yeah,
but
it's a
that
little bit
66, I
higher.
might have believed that like at the heyday of the height of the election, but certainly not for months or
Yeah,
years
because
afterwards.
I would submit it's because they won the next election, and if the Republicans win this election, their trust will also go down because that is sort of the nature of the beast. When you're back at sitting pretty, your trust in the institutions which served you returns, right? So
Well,
we
but
will have a
the
chance to compare that.
but the Democrats never ever engaged in a scheme similar to J6 on the level that Trump did. There were like multiple criminal conspiracies that were moving in tandem.
Why do you think 66% of Democrats thought Putin had intervened to change the tallies? What's your read on that?
I mean, part of it was probably because of Trump and his campaign's behavior, right? The fact that Donald Trump was openly calling for Russia to leak 10,000 emails on public media, the fact that Roger Stone was openly and brazenly working with Julian Assange to leak stuff about the Democrats that was hacked out of their convention by a Russian hacker, the fact that Julian Assange, who was a supporter of Trump, said, "I'm not going to leak anything bad about Trump's campaign because I don't think there's anything that bad to leak." I think that
So you
people
don't think you don't think Clinton literally saying Trump is an illegitimate president because Putin got him elected had anything to do with Democrats changing their minds about that?
I think that there's
Or the
one quote that Hillary said, but that was after the election, and Hillary conceded that night, right?
Yeah, no, I'm glad she conceded that night.
Yeah, and
It's just I
Trump
think this
engaged
is
in
comparable.
multiple Trump engaged in multiple like criminal actions to try to overturn the election outcome, right?
Well, okay, so I we can debate January 6th. I don't think it will be
Hmm.
very productive because I don't think I think at the end of the day, my difference from you will come down to a kind of theory of mind, an unknowable thing, which is Trump's intention and how he intended that day to go down. I really don't think we're going to agree on that. Can I go back to the policy thing though? Because I think it's really important.
You can, yeah, we can go back to that if you want, but it will come back here because I think this is everything. Because I think that the theory of mind and all the other conversation topics don't matter because it draws this weird false equivalency of like, well, all these things are happening. It's like, no, there's like a crazy thing that's happening right now, and I don't know why nobody's talking about it. It's insane to me. Like, just as a quick matter of things, would you agree that January 6th was easily worse than Watergate? Like, because
I
in
think
my mind, there's a thing that no reasonable minds will disagree here. It's impossible to even
I
look at
think it
them.
was very, very bad. Yeah. I mean,
It's not even close to Watergate. It's infinitely worse than Watergate.
worse from what point of view though? Like
From the fact that
from
the
my,
president was working with personal lawyers and was working with members inside and outside of the party to solicit across 7 states 79 fake electors to attest that they were the duly appointed electors for their state and to transmit false votes to the White House. Or I'm sorry, to the Capitol. Yeah.
I think he was availing himself of every legal avenue to prove what he thought was the case, which was that he had won, which is something Democrats have done in 2 of the 3 elections that happened this century as well. But I think the more interesting debate is why some people feel the way I do and not the way you do. No, like it's why people don't are not at like I continue to be consistently impressed with your moral clarity. So I'm asking myself, how come I am not outraged at the level that he is, this person who I respect and admire on this particular issue? And I think that the answer to that is more interesting than litigating, because I've seen you have this debate about January 6th so well, and people much better than me had this argument and this debate. I think the more interesting question is why the people who are not so exercised about it are not so exercised about it. Don't know. Is that not like a, do you not agree with that?
Not even remotely close. It is probably one of the most frustrating, like, gaslighting experiences I've ever had in my entire life. And I think that this is like it's the ruin of this country, is to pretend that this hasn't happened, and then to pretend like afterwards we can just have a conversation about, like, is mom worse for you or is dad worse for you, when, mom spanked you as a kid and dad would, slash your arms with a knife anytime you looked at him wrong. And then to just say, well, I don't think it's worth going into the differences in behavior. I don't think it's really that important to analyze that. Let's just think more about, like, well, what do we think about moms and dads?
But are you not curious why so many millions of Americans don't find this to be disqualifying? Is that not interesting?
I know why. And the reason why is because of the
Yeah.
conservative control over the media. The reason why, I know that
You don't think that.
I do. I know that. I know that for a fact. Because the reason why people disagree is because they think that there is a factual playing field that shows that both sides engage in a bit of tomfoolery. Sometimes the liberals lie, sometimes the conservatives lie. Trump might have done this thing, but Hillary did that thing. And at the end of the day, we're just kind of seeing broadly who supports, like, what policy positions. Because for some reason in the media, there's a lot of credibility given to people who give Trump a fair shake, even if he hasn't earned one. And I don't know personally what to do to overcome that. Help me.
Because they do that because I think they have met a lot of people who, first of all, it's funny to me to hear you say that you think the liberal media gives him a fair shake, because it's, I find,
No. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I misspoke. The liberal media doesn't give him a fair shake. They give him an over fair shake. It's unfair. The liberal media should be chastising and castigating him constantly, but they don't. They give him a free pass on so much.
I watch CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News all day long as part of my day job. They never have a kind word to say about that man. I mean, it's literally, he's a plant of Putin. He's a plant of this one. He's Hitler. He's worse than Hitler, like, day in and day out. Like, it's literally, there's the idea that he's getting a fair shake from them. How often do you watch, like, cable? Probably never.
I just watched a segment yesterday on, I think it was CNN, where they have Mr. Wonderful Kevin O'Leary and some other crazy Jennings or some guy arguing against two other people. Unfortunately, too much. I've watched all the debates so far. Did you watch the Bloomberg debate recently with Trump?
Yeah.
That was one where all the conservatives were complaining that the moderator was too hard on Trump. I thought that in that debate, the moderator wasn't even close to Trump. Like, do you acknowledge it? Like, well, okay, hold on, wait. Here.
No. I don't want you to feel gaslighted.
Okay. Can we just?
Yeah.
I just want to, like, walk through one set of facts. Also, if you want to interrupt me, or if you want to talk about, like, another thing, you can do it. I don't want to, like, hostage take you here. But go ahead.
I think the reason people feel inclined to think about Trump this way is because, I can speak for myself. Why do I feel like countenancing these policy questions that I really want to get to is incredibly important? It's setting aside my own, whatever, aesthetic, moral judgments, whatever. And it's because, like, there are millions and millions and millions of Americans who do not have the luxury of being wrong because their bank accounts do not afford it to them, who say and feel and know and are correct that they were better off, and feel and say
wait,
and
better off when?
Under Trump's first term than under Biden's term.
Trump's first term ended with 18% unemployment, with a destroyed economy.
They don't hold him responsible for the coronavirus, which I don't think they should. I mean, that's, that was a
wait. Then why are we holding Biden responsible for the coronavirus? Because that's the...
No, they're not. If
you were to say I'm better under Trump, but ignore the last half of his presidency, and then say, well, look at what I am under Biden, who is coming in. By the way, the United States Do you acknowledge that the U.S. is outperforming every other G7, every other OECD country right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is this like? Well, we were better under Trump. You weren't better under Trump. You were better before COVID, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure, under Trump. I mean, and the reason that they were better under Trump because he reversed certain economic trends that had been afflicting the United States for since 1971, which was the high watermark for working class wages. They stagnated after that and then began to precipitously decline when you factor in inflation. And the reason for that is policy that, if you're a working class person, at the end of the month, there's a certain amount of money in your bank account. And it doesn't matter what you're hearing from conservative media, like that doesn't lie, right? Like there's a certain level of, existential crisis that no amount of media or culture wars or influencers or what have you can fake, right? It's a reality that you come up against. And the reality is that things were really getting bad for working class people. And Trump reversed that trend. In 2019, we saw the first wage increases for working class Americans in 60 years. If you look at the data, 2019, the bottom 25% of wage earners saw a 4.5% wage increase, and the top 25% of wage earners only saw a 2% wage increase, which means that Trump was the first president since 1971 to shrink the wealth gap, which is something no one wants to talk about because the free market right obviously really doesn't care and really doesn't want to talk about it, but the left doesn't want to give him credit for that. And you ask, okay, how did he do that? Well, through a series of very intentional policies that started to reverse that trend, policies that had been put in place by, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, later Joe Biden, amping up some of them. So, immigration is a really good example because the policy was so clear and so obvious. There were three executive actions that just made the number of illegal immigrants crossing the southern border plummet. And one of the first things Joe Biden did when he came into office was remove those executive orders, which meant that we saw this crisis at the border and, 10 million, 15 million, whatever the number is, illegal immigrants coming into the country. And what that did was immediately halted the wage growth that working class people saw because suddenly you had millions and millions of people competing in a very limited number of industries that had been seeing wage increases because of the limit of illegal labor and because, of course, of the post-pandemic labor crunch. So, things like that, where it's like the policy is very, very clear. And the way that it helped very specific struggling working class Americans is very, very clear. So you could say, look, you vote this guy in, we're not going to have a country because we're not going to have a democracy. And we can definitely debate that. But to somebody who is a janitor, who started to suddenly see like wage increase and then to have that taken away by very obvious, clear executive orders because policy really matters. To me, I wouldn't say to that person, you have to put this other higher order thing ahead of whether you can feed your family. Like, to me, I want to live in a country where working class people who we rely on to survive can achieve the American dream so that, it's not something that just the elites can achieve, which is sort of where we were headed in the years before. And this is all just, aside from the questions of character, aside from the questions of January 6th, like there is, at the end of the day, for me, this as a person of the left, like this very material reality we're coming up against, where we in the elites developed and allowed this economy to flourish, where we did really well. But the people whose labor we rely on to survive were really struggling. And it was when I first realized this, it was not comfortable for me to admit this. I knew I was going to lose all my friends, but I just feel that the data is very clear about that. And I'm not one to say to a person who has much less than me, you're struggling much more than me, you have to put my emotional response to this person ahead of being able to feed your family.
Okay. I'm going to put a pin on the economic stuff because I disagree with you on every single economic claim you just made. But we can come back and we can talk through all of these if you'd like. I'm very interested in these. Okay. I need a sanity test. Okay. This conversation real quick. Okay. I'm just checking. Do we believe that we can know things that we don't directly observe? So, for instance, if I read a news report and it says, yesterday a building exploded in New York, can I believe that that probably happened with a high degree of certainty, even if I haven't myself seen it?
It depends which newspaper.
Mainstream newspaper with millions of readers, if multiple papers are reporting it.
Yes, yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay. And I can like broadly trust like government figures. If the BLS releases a report, sometimes they've got to do revisions, but like broadly speaking, I can trust like kind of figures that come out, right?
I mean, it depends which ones. Again, like there's, a lot of people now at this point in our country who, and I guess this would be my overarching claim is like, I feel responsible to you as a person that I admire. Like everything we disagree on, I consider that it's like the burden is on me to convince you. It's not on you to have. And I feel that way doubly so for when it comes to half the country. So if half the country now feels that the Department of Justice has been weaponized against their political choice, right? The sovereign at one time, who's now, of course, an ex-president. But if they feel that way, that is something you and I are responsible to address.
But this is the central thing I'm making. This is the issue that I'm having is
okay.
Conservatives can cause this feeling to occur in people and then point to liberals, and then people in the center will point to liberals and go, well, look at the people have these feelings. You have to do something about it, right? So when you talk about, for instance, the weaponization of the DOJ, that's something that Donald Trump has done. It's inarguable. There is no evidence that it's happened under Biden. But because Donald Trump and the conservatives and all of the people lying in media on his behalf have said that it's happening under Biden, people have that feeling. And then they come back to the liberals and they go, hey, liberal, you need to address the fact that people feel this way. Well, of course they feel that way. Conservatives have been lying to them about it for years.
Okay, so I'm curious what you make of this counter argument. I do think there's a lot of evidence that it's been weaponized, but the right does try to make this happen more frequently than it succeeds at making this happen. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff you see on Twitter like that they really start to push, and you're like, oh God, this is going to be the latest conspiracy theory. We're going to hear about this forever and ever and ever. And it just doesn't take off. Like you can see, you talk to people, you go to the local bar, you see it is not taking off. Like people are just not buying it.
Wait, but people have bought it.
People have bought that one. People have bought that one. But I'm telling you, like, there's a lot of ones that the right tries to push that people don't buy and people don't talk about and don't want to hear about.
Sure, but I mean, when you're pushing 100 conspiracies and people believe 40 of them, that's a massive success.
Well, or you could say that, some of these like turned out to be true, right? Like the Hunter Biden laptop story, right? Where you had like literally people from, CIA saying like this is Russian misinformation and turned out to be real, right? Like that's legit misinformation coming out of the deep state. So
wait, hold on.
Years,
I understand what you're saying. Okay, hold on. Let's back up a second. Okay. It's okay. I'm just curious if we can do this. Okay, just one simple thing at a time. Okay, one very very small thing at a time.
Yes,
okay.
You can know things that you don't observe.
Yeah. Okay. In the United States of America, individual citizens don't actually have a right to vote for the president. The states have rights to vote, right? So when you go and you cast your ballot at a state, in a state federal election, the state decides how to run those elections. Most states right now, or every state has said that, okay, well, whoever wins the majority of the votes in our state, we're going to tell our electors to cast that vote for president, with the exception of Maine and Nebraska that kind of divvied up based on percentages, right? So I vote in a state, I'm in Michigan, 52% of us vote for a candidate. We're actually voting for their electors. Those electors will fill out their ballots. And then, on 2020, it was December 14th, they fill them out, the governor signs it, and they say, okay, we're going to send these to Congress to be counted on January 6th, right? We agree this is the process?
Yep.
Okay. So when Donald Trump, has his campaign, not his campaign actually, because most of them wouldn't even go along with it. When he has his like personal friends, people like Giuliani or Powell, go out, or Mark Meadows, go out and solicit 79 other people to write down that they are the electors and that they were actually chosen by the state, and then to send in 7 different slates from all of the Democrat-won states to send in 7 Republican ones to the Capitol and say, you should count us instead on January 6th. How is that anything but like, that's not like a good faith legal challenge. That's not like he just had a disagreement. That's like trying to steal an election, right?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of this hangs on what Donald Trump knew and what he didn't know, at what level he was involved, at what level he wasn't involved. I think a lot of this is being litigated through the courts, right? So some of these things were legal, some of these things were not, and
Well,
that's
okay, wait.
all
So
currently
I want to be in
being.
a really specific thing. So first of all, none of it is being like litigated yet. Donald Trump has said that he needs criminal immunity for all of it. That's his defense. He's saying I can't possibly commit crimes as president. That's it. So none of it is being denied. None of the
He's
depositions.
seeking criminal immunity for things he did as an officer of the, what's the exact
He's
language?
seeking criminal immunity for the 4 years that he was president. He might
For
say that it was for
official acts.
president
Yeah.
has nothing to do with sending false slates of electors to people. That has absolutely nothing to do with being the
But he
president.
didn't send them. That was that was Giuliani.
That worked under his direction, and
Oh, right?
Giuliani is his personal
Oh,
lawyer.
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of under dispute?
What's under dispute?
The the degree to which Donald Trump was involved in these efforts.
No.
Like he
Every
definitely
single. That's why the
he,
people. Or go ahead.
well, he thought he had won the election. And his decision, having been convinced that he had won the election and having never said anything to suggest that he thinks anything other than that, was that he was going to
Steal
avail
the election.
himself,
He was going to do a coup.
avail himself of every legal avenue
But
to
that's not
prove
legal. It's
that
illegal.
he had, well, that's being litigated by the courts, right? I mean, the courts are
No, he's
deciding.
saying I need criminal immunity for all of this. That's their
No,
defense.
that was a separate court case.
No,
There's
it
a whole
was that
fraud
was this one.
case going on. There's a fraud case going on, which hangs precisely on it is fraud to the extent that Donald Trump thinks he lost and still tried to pursue these legal avenues. And it is not fraud to the extent that he thinks he won, which is, of course, why he very cleverly has never admitted that he lost. Now, again, I'm not defending this behavior
You are
necessarily.
defending it though by saying that like it's a legitimate way
I'm
to.
saying it's not, I'm saying that availing yourself of every legal avenue to prove that you won an election is not disqualifying
That's
to
it's
me
not
personally.
legal. They lied. They told 79 different people to lie and say they were the electors. That's not a legal avenue. It's just a lie. They weren't the
So you're
electors, right?
saying Rudy Giuliani lied.
No, I'm saying that the Trump group, everybody attests that Rudy and Trump were both in the same conversations where in the Trump campaign, when Trump decided to pursue this strategy, that's what all of the deposition, all the testimony, all the people involved have said who aren't part of Trump's criminal conspiracy have all said, yeah, Trump and Giuliani. And remember,
See, this is
Giuliani
why
is,
I think this is not necessarily worth arguing because you are convinced that Trump is convinced that he lost. And
yes, of
I'm
course.
convinced that Trump is convinced that he won.
Yeah, but you have no evidence for that. And
But
there's
that
so
makes
much
all the
evidence on the other
difference.
side.
Well, I feel there's a lot of evidence for it. Namely, he's never once admitted that he lost, which is a
Wait.
lot of evidence.
So there's no way to know if a person is lying if they just don't tell you they're lying?
He seems to me to be very convinced about it in the way that he's lying. Yeah, you're saying, how can you tell if somebody is lying?
Yeah.
How do we usually tell? How would you know if I was lying? You would judge my affect. You would judge my consistency. You would judge the tone of my voice. You would judge my body language, right? You would judge my
No. I would judge the
statements.
actions you take. I would look at the actions. So if you were to do legitimate challenges in a courtroom and you were to have what you believe to be is very solid and strong evidence, and you were ardently pursuing what you thought was the right answer, then I'd say, oh, okay. I mean, they have a lot of conviction. But if you were filing bullshit court cases, a lot of them without even standing, asking for insane remedies in civil cases, engaged in multiple criminal conspiracies to try to overturn an election, and then asking another guy, Pence, to just unilaterally overthrow it for you, which Pence has come out and said that he had been asked to do, I would say, oh, it sounds like you don't think you won. It sounds like you're just trying to stay in power, right? Like, what could Trump possibly have done in your
I think
mind?
I mean, I look at him like he thinks he won and he thinks it was stolen from him, just like Hillary Clinton thinks she won in 2016 and thinks it
Wait,
was
she
stolen from
didn't,
her.
but Hillary never said that. Hillary never engaged in any criminal conspiracy. She never said she thought she won.
I agree with you that she behaved better.
No.
I
It's not
totally
behave better.
concede
She
that.
didn't, categorically. It's not the same.
She called Trump an illegitimate president who would not have won without irregularities.
He wouldn't have won without irregularities. That's absolutely true, right? Without Putin's intervention, without the Kremlin's intervention, without the DNC leaks in the Wait, what
don't
part of that is not
understand.
true?
Oh, I just think that that's election denial, and I don't engage in that.
Hold on. Wait, I'm sorry. Wait. Do you think that the leaking of the hacked material from the DNC had absolutely zero impact on the election? It was a very close election.
I think it. I think. Yeah, I don't think. I think people felt really strongly that they wanted Donald Trump to be president. Yeah.
Wait. So you don't. But you think that the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Here's the difference. No, I don't think that changed the outcome of the election. Here's the difference between us. Like, you're very smart, and so you think most people are much dumber than you, which is probably true. And I am not very smart. And so I think I'm like everybody else. And so it doesn't occur to me that somebody would be fooled by a social media post that I would never be fooled by. Like I just can't imagine
You're aware that like a
those.
quarter of conservatives, a quarter of Republicans believe that there is a high level satanic pedophile sex cult in the Democratic Party. A quarter of conservatives believe that. You know that like Marjorie Taylor Greene is a QAnoner. She believed in the Hawaiian Jewish space lasers. Like,
I mean, I have a lot,
do you acknowledge either of those things are true? That a quarter
I
of conservatives
admire Marjorie Taylor Greene a lot. I think she cares deeply about the
do you
people in her
acknowledge that
district.
Marjorie Taylor Greene was a QAnoner?
She has said that she used to believe some very sketchy things and no longer believes them. Yeah, I think that's true.
So she used to be a QAnoner, right? That believed in satanic sex
Well,
cults.
here's the thing. Here's the
You
thing.
won't even
Like,
acknowledge this. This is
so
the
I,
issue, right? So there
here's
is
the
no
thing.
second or third
Here's
order
the thing.
conversation. We don't live in the
I
same
don't,
factual world. This
I,
is the whole issue that I'm having.
okay. So I hope you're not feeling gaslighted. Please tell me if I'm not trying to not answer your question. I'm just trying to suggest like a different gloss on it, which is like, yeah, QAnon is insane, right? There's people who believe that, right?
Like
But
Marjorie Taylor Greene did, and probably still
but it
does.
did and no longer does. Says she no longer does. But here's the thing. It turns out that there was an actual pedophile who was photographed and had very close relationships with a lot of people very high up in the Democratic Party, right?
Who?
Like,
Epstein?
yes.
Notice why is the other side so silent on Donald Trump's appearance in pictures with
So
Epstein?
and Donald Trump was in pictures with him. I'm not saying that this is a justification for QAnon, which I think is also probably anti-Semitic in some ways. But what I am saying is that like a lot of the time, like they are onto something and they go too far. But what we've done in like, especially in elite leftist discourse, is epic levels of gaslighting to make people feel insane for pointing out things that are real. And, you know,
What would well
just
here? Wait.
kind of come
Okay,
back to policy for a second.
No. We're not. We're way divorced from the policy we're right now. What would it take for you to convince you that Donald Trump knew that he lost the election?
What would it take to convince you that he didn't?
What would it take to convince me that I already said, like if he was filing legitimate court cases with some kind of evidence and strong like claims, if he hadn't engaged in behavior a year beforehand, saying that it was rigged, that it was going to be rigged before it even happened, if he hadn't he denied the 2016 election results, by the way, that he won. He put together a commission to find voter fraud. They found none. They disbanded it.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, like this is insane. So
I mean, I could imagine him like I could imagine him saying something, either saying I did lose it, but now I'm back, right? Which is
wait. So he has to. So this is. Hold on, wait. Just another quick sanity check. For the criminal court system in the United States of America, we ascertain people's states of mind without confessions, right? Like you can convict somebody on first-degree murder or any kind of criminal like charge that requires a mens rea, a criminal mind, right? We can convict these without having mind readers in the courtroom, right? So we can figure out people's states of mind, right?
yeah, but I'm saying I have spent a lot of time considering this question. I mean, I'm not a spokesperson for the campaign or anything. Like I had to decide
Sure.
who I'm
But then
going
I'm
to vote
asking, so
for,
what would you have
right?
to see from Trump to be convinced that he
I
knew that he
just
lost the
feel like
election?
every time he talks about it, he seems to me like a person who is deeply, deeply convinced that he won.
Yeah, but what would you have to see to think that like, oh, okay, he probably
He could, I could, even right now, I could picture him saying something in a kind of like wink and, kind of like, I could picture the kind of affect that, I would expect from him if I thought he was lying about
So
it.
you would have to see him basically confess to it or basically say something
No, I
that.
would have to see him say it in a way that I felt less convinced by. I mean, obviously, this is how we always judge whether somebody's lying or
No,
not.
it's
It's like,
absolutely not, to be clear. We judge generally by people's actions, right? To see if we think they're not if they're really convincing in the way they speak to us, right?
I don't think him having like a lunatic team trying to do, what he thought was the right thing is evidence that he was lying about it.
He didn't, but he went and personally got that lunatic team, right?
I'm not,
Real
I
quick.
don't think that
Do you
Rudy Giuliani
acknowledge,
Rudy Giuliani was the best, like, I don't think that
do you
was,
acknowledge that Donald Trump went and personally recruited Giuliani, Sidney Powell, and Eastman? These weren't White House lawyers.
yeah, yeah, of course he
Okay,
did.
so we can't say that he just has a lunatic team. These were his representatives, right? These were the people that he personally hired.
Who he thought would find the evidence that
And
he had won, which he believed was true.
but none of the people that were tasked with investigating, all of those people told him that it was false. Barr did. Everybody in the White House did.
Yeah.
Raffensperger and all the states did. Yeah. Everybody tasked with investigating, federal investigators, people like BJ Pak, federal judges, like everybody said that it was bullshit.
Yeah, but you have to understand like what it's like to be Donald Trump. I think there was a really good example of this last week when he did an interview with the editor-in-chief of Bloomberg News, and he sat there and the guy just sat there and said to him like again and again, like every economist thinks that this thing that you're proposing will be bad. And Donald Trump was like, yeah, but it really worked really well in the 4 years I was president.
Yeah, but it didn't work. That's a lie. That's a lie. And all the economists do agree that large tariffs are bad, right?
I totally disagree with that. I think there's a ton of evidence, and we can go through the evidence on tariffs. I'd love to get back to policy and talk about tariffs with you. I think he's totally right. But his entire presidency was him implementing policies that helped average working class Americans, and being told that he was either racist for doing it or stupid.
No,
or that
he was being told that he was being racist because he was saying things like a Mexican judge, a person of whose parents were Mexican, couldn't sit as a judge on a case of his because he thought he would be biased, or because he was
racist.
What?
That was before the election, but that was racist.
Well, then you'd admit. So he's taken actions.
There's been mass gaslighting around issues like immigration to average people on both sides of the political aisle who had to just sit there and take it for years because both parties were sort of hand in glove on this neoliberal economic agenda. We were going to have free trade, and we're going to have like mass immigration, and we're going to have no tariffs.
Why was Obama called the deporter in chief? Like Barack Obama was known as being incredibly harsh on immigration. Under Obama's administration, for the first time ever, we saw a net decrease.
More harsh than Ronald Reagan, that's for sure, because he gave amnesty to 3 million immigrants.
Sure, Reagan was a long time ago.
I'm sorry?
Reagan was a long time ago. I'm just saying that the gaslighting is happening right now. Obama was not easy on immigrants, right?
He was less easy on immigrants than Bill Clinton was, but he was mostly deporting criminals. I mean, look, it's you're right. You're totally right about that.
And if we want to talk policy for a policy thing, right? And this is why I know that conservatives don't vote on policy and they don't care about illegal immigrants. I don't think it even affects the country that much, or at least people don't think it does. Because if they did think that, why would they all cheer when Trump annihilated the immigration bill in Congress?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Republicans decided to pull the plug on the immigration bill, on the border bill in Congress, because Donald Trump told them to keep the border open for an election issue. Why wouldn't everybody be mad if this was such a huge deal in the United States?
Because that immigration bill set the bar for closing the border at 5,000 illegal immigrants a day.
Right now, the bar is unlimited.
Bill.
It did more than that. The bar right now is
not true, because then Biden took executive action 3 months later, and he set the bar at 2,000. So just by defeating the bill, the bar was then lowered by 3,000 illegal immigrants a day. You can't with a straight face say that people aren't experiencing what's going on.
I know for a fact they're not. I know they're not. If you
go into the inner city in any major city in America, talk to Black people, they are pissed about this because this is and has always come at their expense.
If you go, then why do all the major cities vote blue? They're all blue.
You're going to wait and see what happens this time. The level at which Black Americans are going to be voting for Donald Trump is going to be pretty high and staggering. And a lot of it has to do with the gaslighting around immigration, the sort of stolen valor from the civil rights movement, to where you're suddenly asking people who have been at the bottom of the pecking order in this country since its inception to bear the burden of giving other people the American dream that they were never granted. I mean, this is something people will tell you if you ask them about it. It's so obvious. If you bring in 10 million people and 8 million of them are going to be working in 5 industries, the wages in those industries are going to absolutely plummet.
But that hasn't happened. That doesn't happen.
Absolutely has happened. And it's happened over the last
In which industries have these
seen it in
No, we haven't. That's not true. We have not.
Absolutely have.
We have not.
This is, if you look at where there was amazing wage growth in 2019. Then you had the post-pandemic labor crunch. immense wage growth for working class people because you had a whole bunch of people drop out of the labor force and they were getting great wages. And then suddenly inflation was up and Biden decided to decriminalize illegal border crossing. And that wage growth
Wage.
halted in its
I'm
tracks.
pretty sure
There
real
is
wages
so
right now are
much
real
evidence.
wages right now are higher than they were at the end of 2019. Like we've gotten higher than where we were on quarter four, like post COVID. Like, but the whole economy was booming when Trump came into office. Like after the Obama recovery for all of Obama's last
Here's the
term.
thing, you can't talk about the economy in the aggregate because there are different sectors of it, okay? So for example, right now, during the pandemic, right after the pandemic, if you owned property, if you had stocks like now, right, last year, the year before, not during the pandemic, but you saw huge, huge growth because look at what's going on in the real estate market. I mean, look at the interest rates, right? So if you own property right now, it's probably worth like a quarter more what it was
Don't
2 years
most people
ago,
in the United States
5 years
live in
ago.
homes that are owned? Isn't like 70% of Americans in homes that are owned by the person living in them?
60% of Americans are homeowners. But you have to look at the breakdown there. A lot of those people are retired, and a lot of those people are people who are in the top 20%. And you have a lot of Americans who are working class, who work really hard, and who will never be able to own a home.
Wait,
And
top
they don't have
20% and
stocks.
retired of what?
What do you mean of
What
what?
are they in the top 20% about?
The top 20% in America controls over 50% of the GDP. There's
Are
been
we,
an
are we talking
upward
wealth? Are we
trend, yeah,
talking like
wealth.
income? Because if they're old, of course they're going to be in the top 20. They're older. They have more time to accumulate wealth, right?
Yeah,
So
but
we
they're not, seniors are not 20% of the country, right?
Well,
So
no,
we
but you
have an
said
elite.
60% of the country are homeowners, so it's more than just old rich seniors buying homes, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But there's a lot of people who want to be homeowners. There's a lot of people who would love to own property who are stuck in the renter's market and will never be able to afford to own a home. There are people who are really struggling, who are struggling to pay rent, who are working two, three jobs and just cannot make it at the end of the month. And the inflation is absolutely killing them. And all they want is to go back to the economy from 2019. And because they want
But what
that,
is
they're
but the
told
what
that
is
they
the
don't believe in democracy.
well,
They're
they don't believe in
told
democracy because of Trump trying to steal
that
the
they're
election.
racist. They're told about
You
this and
already
that
admitted that
because
Trump said and has
there
done
is
things that are
certain.
racist. But
Well, I admitted that saying that the judge could not be objective because he was Mexican is a racist thing to say. It's obvious. I
sure,
mean,
that was one of many things he's questionably said and done. But
I think it was really racist when Joe Biden said, if you don't vote for him, you're not black. I mean, that's pretty racist
wait,
too.
wait, wait, wait. Do you think that those two things are on the same level?
I think they're both racist.
I didn't ask that. Do you think those things are on the same level?
I think Joe Biden was probably like kind of saying it half jokingly, so it's not as bad.
Do you think that those things are on the same level? Like
I
like
literally just said, I
the
don't think
Joe
it's
the,
as bad because he was
when Joe
joking.
Biden made that comment, Joe Biden was if you listen to the statement, he's obviously trying to say like if you don't support the black community, you don't support me. Or if you don't vote for me, you don't support the black community, right? And it came out if you don't support me, you aren't black. But he wasn't that obviously that wasn't what he was trying to say, right? When Donald Trump said this guy can't be my judge. He said that his brain was Hispanic poisoned because his parents are Mexican, and because
I
Trump is
think
hard on Mexico, this
I
judge, this
think
federal judge, wouldn't be able to sit on his case. You acknowledge those two statements are not even in the same universe of
no,
statements,
I
right?
think suggesting that black people have to vote a certain way or be called not black or traitors to their race is racist. That's bad. That's very bad. It's very offensive. Yeah, that sucks. I think he was joking, so I think it was less bad. I think it was like Trump saying, I'm going to be a dictator for a day. It's a joke, so it's not as bad,
Well,
but
but Trump, to be clear,
still
Trump's not
racist.
joking when he says that, though, right?
But
Trump,
no, that was obviously a joke. I mean, that was 100% a joke.
you
Like
realize that that was in response
totally.
to Sean Hannity trying to give him a softball
Yes, I
question,
do. And
but it
he was
wasn't a
like,
joke when he said it.
just for a day. How can you be a dictator just for a day? It doesn't make any sense. It's a joke. It was a funny joke.
What do you
It's a pretty
mean?
good
No, it makes
joke.
perfect sense because people like you would say, well, he was just exploring all the legal avenues available to him to see
No,
what he
he
could get
was
done.
making fun of people like you who are like, oh my God, he's going to be a dictator. It was a joke. You know it was a joke. Come on. You know that was a joke.
I think that people like you are destroying this country. I legitimately feel like if this country falls, it's because of this hand wringing that happens for Donald Trump. You have no standard of behavior for him. You will make an unlimited amount of excuses. You will compare a Joe Biden misspeak to how Donald Trump conducts it. It is sad that we don't share it. So like I said, like all these policy discussions don't matter because we don't live in the same reality. You won't admit that Donald Trump, like, I'm curious, do you think that
I feel so convinced that you and I have shared values and you're trying to call me destroying the country? Like, doesn't that give you pause? Like, I think that we probably have a lot in common. I'm trying to get to the policy conversation so
I
we can talk
agree
about
that I think there's people
everything that we have in
but that's
common.
why I'm
Like,
saying
we probably both want Americans overall to prosper and to be safe and to have beautiful families and to be able to provide for them in dignity. You know, like I can't.
I understand that. I agree with that. And I probably no, I agree
and
with
I'm
no,
trying to be like, let's find out like what we agree on because there's so much there. And you're like, you're destroying this country.
Do you think that people that send their gay children to reprogramming camps, do you think that they love their children?
That's such an interesting question. I've never thought about that before. Let me think about it. You mean because it's harmful, but they're doing it out of love?
Yes.
Is that the conundrum?
Well, it's not a conundrum. It's that just because you have a shared value of like an emotional or like a moral value that you share doesn't mean that you'll align on anything else. I'm sure that the Germans that supported Hitler, right, probably legitimately, I doubt they were all like, we're just doing this because we hate the Jews. They probably...
I started this by saying, I don't think we agree on much, but I would rather be in a we with you than in a country without you because I think we share values. And if I can't convince you, I have to work harder. Like, it's not even a question of, it would never occur to me to think that you're destroying this country. I think that you're a patriot who disagrees with me on issues. And I'm like,
but we can't. You understand there are some disagreements
in the conversation
but there are,
with you.
You understand there are some.
The idea that you could look at me because of some random person who neither of us has ever met and say that I'm destroying the country over some third party who, like,
the president of the United States.
I find that so.
Do you agree that like we have to live in the same reality, regardless of like any moral like similarities we might have? That we have to live in the same reality? In order for the country to function, right? Then there are some values that we have to share. And if we don't share these values, you have to be kicked out of the country, right? You agree with that, right?
But we do share those values.
Wait.
No, that's actually not how it works here.
Well,
you're an American if you're born in America. We don't kick people out for not sharing our values.
So we have a whole thing called the criminal code, right? And if there are certain things that you disagree with in the criminal code, it doesn't matter. If you do these things, you're incompatible and we deprive you of your rights, right?
Well, you go to prison. We don't kick you out of the country.
Sure, okay. But you're kicked out of society, right? Felons are effectively removed from civil society, and you lose rights, right, for criminal conduct, for criminal misconduct, right, or criminal conduct, I guess, right. So there are a set of things that we have to agree on, at the very least, when it comes to how we treat other people. You can't murder, you can't steal from people, or commit arson, break the whatever, right. We agree with that. I think that epistemically, there are things that we have to agree on as well. We have to have some shared value in terms of like, we agree that, democratic republics are good things. Now that might take different versions of it. Maybe somebody thinks that we should do more referendums and somebody else thinks that we should balance the electoral college or whatever that might do. But like, if somebody's like, oh, I think that we should just have a king, right? Well, that's not very compatible with American values, right? Do we agree with that? That there has to be like some set of like...
You're stuck with me and all of the millions of people who agree with me. So what are you going to do with us? Like, you're stuck with us. You have to convince us, or you know what I mean? There's no other option.
That's my goal. My goal is to have a conversation and convince you.
Telling me I'm destroying the country is not going to convince me.
I'm not saying that for you. I'm saying that for the audience. That's the difference, right? It's because if I can't communicate with you, then I have to communicate to other people.
You are communicating with me.
I'm not. I can't.
Listening to everything
we can't share. Okay. I mean, like, you told me earlier that I can't give you a single set of facts that would convince you that Donald Trump knows that he lost the 2020 election.
I disagree with you about that. That doesn't mean that I don't belong in this country or that I'm not a person who loves this country.
If you don't believe in the results of the last election, would you agree that like the election and the peaceful transfer of power are one of the most important parts of the United States of America?
I think, like I said,
wait. Do you agree that? Do you agree that the?
I agree that it is paramount.
Okay,
and I agree also. I believe, as the polling found, that 66% of Democrats believe that Putin had stolen the last election and interfered in the tallies. Okay, so clearly that cannot be the standard by which we judge who gets to be an American, who gets to be part of our community.
Number one, that's whatever you're citing is not true. That's not that the election was fake or fraudulent. That might have been
That
true in one
Putin
poll.
literally intervened in the voting machines and the tallies.
Now, I don't want to put you on the spot, but where did this come from? Or where did this number or idea come from?
This number of 66%, this is like it was like widely circulated right after the election.
I've seen in 2018 that this is a YouGov poll, 59% of Democrats are very concerned about improper relations between the Trump campaign and Russia. I see that.
I can send you this figure that's very widely known.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, you can shoot it to me later. But the fact that
Like,
in the wait
miserable if you think you can only exist in community with people, like if the only people who you think are not destroying this country, like are people who totally agree with you.
No, I never said totally. It's people who live in the same reality. You have to live in the same reality.
It's like, I admire you so much. I want to hear everything you have to say. I want to have this conversation with you, but I am destroying America because I don't agree with you about something. Like,
it's because we are having core fundamental value disagreements. Core fundamental value disagreements is the issue, right?
This is not core fundamental.
This is core. This is more core than anything else we've spoken about.
I agree with you on the value.
You're agreeing with me. The value doesn't matter if it's generated after a totally different epistemic foundation, right? If we both say, for instance, we should be kind and compassionate to people, and a person says that I think that compassion is sending my gay kid to a re-education camp to get away the gayness, and another person says, well, I think that kindness is accepting my child as they are and not trying to force them into a different sexuality, right? Both of them can share that value of kindness, but they're coming from a completely and totally different place. There's no shared commonality there. So, like something is completely different between the two, right?
And you know what? There's only one way to stop the first parent from doing that and make them become the second person, the second kind of parent. And it's by being in conversation with them. It's not by saying you're destroying this country.
Yeah, but when people on the outside are trying to say that both those parents are the exact same.
You have to have a consensus, right? You have to develop a consensus around things. And it's really amazing because Trump did actually create consensus around a lot of issues, but it's not
to be clear, Donald Trump was not popular. He never exceeded 50%. Donald Trump had no policies. What are we talking about?
How can you say that? I mean, he implemented executive order after executive order. He was extremely effective on trade, on immigration.
He wasn't effective on trade or immigration. That's not true. What are we saying? Wait, how is he effective on trade? He failed miserably at trying to bring any of the Chinese manufacturing jobs to the United States. That took the CHIPS Act from Joe Biden.
All right, I'll just give you one example. Tariffs on steel and aluminum. He imposed a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum. And immediately, all of the economists, literally all of the economists said, oh, this is going to explode the cost. No one's going to be able to build anything. No one's going to be able to buy anything, blah, blah, blah. But Trump said, you know what, he didn't say this, but the rationale behind it was, the average steel worker makes $88,000 a year. Most of them are working in the South. So these are like right to work states. So these are not even union jobs, okay? 88K, solidly middle-class wages in a lot of states in the South. We're going to protect this. Like, why would we flood the market with tons and tons of cheap Chinese, steel and aluminum? We're going to protect our industry.
Just as a quick thing, so I'm looking at steel production figures, and I don't see this moving in a positive direction, basically, at all under Trump. It's about the same as it was under Obama, so I don't believe that, number one. Number two,
that's exactly the point. He protected it from going down.
It wasn't going down. It was... It was
because he put the okay. I don't know what you're looking at on your screen, but you didn't even.
Well, you also have to. You also have to.
Can I just finish let me just finish the story, because it did actually the price for steel and aluminum did go up a little bit, because right after he imposed the tariffs, 25% tariff has a really big impact. The price did go up for about 4 months, and then it went right back to where it was because internal free market capitalistic competition within the U.S. between steelmakers brought that price right back down again. And that's exactly what you want. I mean, that's what an America First policy would look like. It would be something that, protects the labor of the American worker from cheap foreign competition. And that was 100% a Trump. And, if you talk to economists, sometimes they'll
you understand that, like, we can't manufacture everything in the United States, right?
We can't manufacture everything, but we were manufacturing much more in 1971.
First of all, wait. Why would we want to manufacture base level material when we can put together more sophisticated products? Why would we think it's like good for the economy to tariff like basic products when we could be...
I think it's really good for an economy to have men doing jobs that don't require a college degree, making $88,000 a year on average. Like that's just a very good thing because
Okay,
we
then in
want
that
more
case,
people to be middle class. And so it
wait,
turns out those jobs are middle class
but
jobs.
then
We want
all
to
of
keep
those
them
people are
here.
also, first of all, not, so you're talking about one small sector of the economy that they employed, right? To whoever is working in steel manufacturing, that's going to make every single thing more expensive that has
But I
these
just
products
told
in
you it
them.
actually didn't do that. It actually did not have that impact because the price of steel then leveled off. So it did
If
go
it
up for
doesn't
about
make,
4
then why
months.
were we importing it if it wasn't cheaper?
Well, here's the thing about tariffs that people don't realize is like when you, it's actually very important very expensive to get something from one place to another.
Wait, then
So
why did people import it? Why didn't we just make it in the US originally?
why did they ship the jobs overseas to China in the first place?
Yes.
The labor in China is much cheaper.
Yeah, so it was cheaper to produce it over there. So if we tariff that and produce it here, it's going to be more expensive.
Well, no, because we don't have to transport it here. There's a lot of recovered costs.
Then why did we ever export it to
You
China?
really would have to ask the manufacturers why they did that. I think a lot of them were selling it to China. They were selling it, not to America. They were selling it around the world globally. I mean, there's a lot of companies that are like so invested in China that you look at Apple, for example, Apple is more like a subsidiary of the Chinese Communist Party at this point than it is like an American company because it's completely under the thumb of China.
Wait, do you
The
think
whole
Apple has that
supply
problem
chain
more, or
is
do you think TikTok has that problem more?
TikTok for sure, but Apple is, it's getting close. They give them all the data that they want from dissidents. It's really terrible. Why are you a person who thinks that TikTok is dangerous?
Um,
Or are you
I think
making
it's
fun of
I think
me?
it's
I can't tell.
concerning. No, I think it's
Oh,
concerning.
see, we
Um,
agree on that. I have to go in 10 minutes, but I want to end on a nice note. Can we talk about things we agree about again? I
we
need you to
don't
feel
agree.
better
I
about
don't
this.
feel better. I don't feel good.
Why do we agree on Israel and disagree on this? Like,
We don't agree on
how did
Israel. I
that
promise
happen?
you, we don't agree on Israel.
Really? Why?
Absolutely not.
How are
Because
you
I
so
think that
convinced?
Israel 100% goaded the October 7th attacks into happening by foolishly and arrogantly assuming that they could kick the Palestinian problem can down the road forever and inflame those passions by moving the embassy to Jerusalem, by continuing to illegally annex and expand settlements in the West Bank without a permanent ceasefire or a permanent settlement agreement in place with the Palestinians, and by trying to do more and more bilateral peace agreements through the Abraham Accords while also continuing to ignore the Palestinians. I think that there was an incredibly arrogant decision by Israel to do so, and I think they did it to the harm and the detriment of the country.
I think it's a very legitimate point of view. I mean, it's not mine, but it's totally legitimate.
Okay.
How come you think how come you're able to see the anti-Semitism and so many other people can't see it?
Well, at this point, I think people just see what they want to see, and I think
But
that
how come you want to see it?
I'm willing to see things because one, I'm lucky enough to not have a political community anywhere. I'm literally just all on my own. So I fight with leftists, I fight with conservatives, I fight with anybody that I want to, and I have a lot of political freedom as a result of building my own community. So that allows me to two, actually read a bunch of stuff and just develop my own opinion, independent of whoever I'm trying to appease at that particular moment in time. I don't have to worry about that. So I don't get paid by Russia like Tenet Media did, or like Dave Rubin or Tim Pool. I need people working there, and I don't have a big allegiance to any particular political community. Basically, yeah.
Very interesting. It's always interesting when people are swimming against. Do you feel that you're swimming against the tide, or you don't even experience it that way?
I think that the majority of people that say that they are swimming against the tide are just looking to swim along with a different tide, and then they dip their hand into the other one and they pretend they're getting a lot of pushback. It's like a comedian that stands up and goes, "I'm going to make a really edgy joke right now," and then they make fun of trans people. Like, wow, I'm so edgy. It's like, congratulations. Like, you're in a crowd of people. They're all cheering you on. Yeah, I don't define my political positions that way, but I'm super depressed.
Oh no. Oh no, I feel awful. You invited me on your show and I depressed you. I'm so sorry.
Are
Why?
you?
Don't be
It's
depressed.
depressing. It's horrible. The conservatives have no standard for behavior in this country,
I'm
but
not
you're
a
okay with that.
conservative. I'm a leftist.
Wait, do you support Kamala Harris in this upcoming election?
I'm still making up my mind. Like there are definitely things that could
You're
change.
supporting Donald Trump 100%.
No, I haven't. I really am still.
There's no reasonable person that is undecided at this point. It's impossible. Like what
I
could
really
possibly
liked her sort of the plan that came out right in the beginning to fight price gouging. But then we haven't heard much about that since. I think that's one of the most important issues is how groceries have raised basically the greedflation from corporations, and I haven't
Sure,
heard
but I
Trump
mean,
talk
like one of
about
the
that.
reasons why we don't. Do you agree that we don't talk about policy a lot because Donald Trump doesn't talk about policy?
Donald Trump talks about policy
Can you
constantly.
give me a single policy he's talked about besides tariffs?
Immigration,
What is his policy? He just says we're going to close the border. There's
mass
no.
deportations.
You think that's a real thing that's going to happen? We're going to deport 20 million people or
I
whatever?
don't know, but it has the support of 51% of
That's not a
Americans and
policy. That's a slogan.
63% of
That's
Hispanics.
a
So it's
slogan. He
very
has no
popular.
border. That's fine. Yeah, slogans are popular, but there's no legislation he's proposed. There's no bill that he's
He's not in
supporting.
government. How could he propose
He
legislation?
shot it down when he was out of government.
I mean, that was not a good bill.
You can say it wasn't a good bill, but it was
Really
authored
bad
by
bill.
Lankford in the Senate. Most Republican commentators agree that was a gift to Kamala Harris and that it was a bill that probably would have been unpopular with a lot of Democrats, but now they can take credit for saying that the other side basically shot it down, which they did.
Yeah, but people are not buying that. See, that's an example of the Democrats trying to push a line that is not. But let's get back to the like why you're feeling depressed and how I can like make you feel better.
We live in fundamentally separate realities. There's no feeling better about it. We just live in a totally different. Do you think that like when you look at the immunity decision from the Supreme Court and Donald Trump seeking that type of like criminal immunity, does that type of stuff worry you? Is that a thing that bothers you at all?
Um, I do think that it's important that a president have some level of immunity. Otherwise, like, what they were saying, well, people could then, go after Barack Obama for drone strikes and
Wait,
like you
but
can't.
Barack Obama was president. He came and he went, and nobody did. So what was the issue? Barack Obama didn't ask for criminal immunity. Do you notice that Barack Obama went to the White House, the Office of Legal Counsel, and the DOJ? That's where he tried to get his advice from, not private attorneys that he hired to steal an
I
election
mean,
for him. Like,
you're not gonna like the answer to this, but it's I think it is okay. Let me see if I could if you would agree with this.
I think I would. Can I guess your
Do
answer?
you
Can I guess your answer? Are you
do
gonna
you
say that Barack Obama was part of the establishment and Donald Trump
do
came in
you
as an outsider and the
agree
deep state was fighting against him and that's why he needed more protection than Barack
do
Obama, who
you
was part of the
agree
establishment?
that it is in the nature of power to try to keep and consolidate and grow its power rather than cede it?
This is another great example of a value statement because I agree with it. I do agree with that, but you're going to agree with it. But I'm going to say what you're saying doesn't make sense because the power is shared among people in government. Donald Trump doesn't want to share power. That's why for instance, why isn't Donald Trump running with the same vice president that he had before?
I mean, because Donald Trump is not a conservative and Mike Pence is a conservative. Donald Trump does not
JD
believe in
Vance is a
free trade,
conservative. What are you talking
in
about?
free trade
Wait.
and
JD Vance is a
Pence is
conservative,
a free
right?
trader
Wait.
and Donald Trump does
JD
not
Vance
believe in foreign wars and
JD
Mike
Vance
Pence
is a
believes in
conservative. Do you
foreign
acknowledge that
wars.
JD Vance is a conservative?
He is,
Okay,
but
wait. So
he
then
believes.
that doesn't make any
I'm
sense.
saying there are three. The argument I'm trying to make is like there were sort of three planks of the GOP, the Reagan GOP. Okay. There was the foreign interventions and American exceptionalism. There was free markets and free trade, and there was social conservatism. That was the GOP before Trump. And Trump showed up, and Trump is not a social conservative. He does not believe in foreign wars, and he does not believe in free trade. And he basically took an axe to the sort of three legs of the party, which are, you look at the primary, and that's kind of what Nikki Haley represented. And there's just zero interest in that from the Republican electorate anymore. Like nobody wants that version of the GOP anymore. So Mike Pence really represented that. And I think he took him the first time around because, he thought, oh, I should try to get those establishment Democrats to vote for me with this guy.
But
And
then
now
why did he choose JD Vance, who is
because
an
JD Vance
establishment
represents
Republican?
he's very much not an establishment
He literally
Republican.
said that Trump was going to be like he didn't know if Trump was America's
Well,
Hitler
a big change of heart since
when he
then.
got picked for VP.
No, he's been pro-Trump for the last, I want to say like 2 or 3 years.
That's enough. He was governor and he's a Republican prior to that.
He's a senator. He's not a
Or I'm
governor.
sorry, a senator prior to that.
Yeah. Very pro-Trump senator. By the
No,
way,
he said that Donald Trump represented the exact type of speech that scared people that he loved.
that was before he became a senator. But as a senator, J.D. Vance has been the most bipartisan senator in the Republican Party since he got into the Senate. He sided with the railroad workers. He's every time Bernie Sanders has asked for anything, related to workers' rights, J.D. Vance has been, pretty on board with that. He walked a picket line with auto workers. You know, he's a pro worker, anti-trade, you know, anti um, foreign intervention, foreign wars,
Wait, hold on.
conservative.
Are you, or I'm not, this isn't like personal, I'm just asking because I see the pen and everything. Are you Israeli or do you like support America supporting Israel?
I'm Jewish.
Okay.
I'm not Israeli.
Okay. Do you think that
Yeah.
America should support Israel?
I think right now it is very much in America's strategic interests. We get a lot out of that relationship, but I think we honestly, at this point, are getting more out of the foreign aid we give to Israel than Israel is. And I think Israel should stop taking it because it's really hobbled its ability to be sovereign, in my view.
Do you think that the United States should continue to support Ukraine?
No. I don't think we get anything out of that relationship. I'm much more like Barack Obama in 2012. I don't see Russia as a great threat to the United States. And I think it's really interesting that that's now considered to be like a conservative position when that was the Democrats' position until very recently,
Sure.
including after they annexed Crimea. But I guess this is for the next conversation. I hope you'll
Sure.
have me back.
Do you think, yeah, I mean, we can chat whenever you want. Do you, just
I'm,
as a curious thing,
I'm
do you think that Russia tries to like interfere in our digital media?
Sure, yeah. I don't think that their interferences are determinative or convincing, but of course they do. Yeah, sure.
Do you believe in like
I
that
think we do that to other countries as well. I
as much
mean,
as
I
Russia
think
does?
that's probably not as much, but we have a bad history with nation building and intervening and regime change. And, you know, we've got our share of, you know, faults. Luckily, I think the American people are too smart for that crap. So it doesn't bother me very much. I mean, I think we should have better relations with them so they wouldn't do it. But I don't feel like that's actually altering the minds of my fellow Americans. I just have too much faith in them.
Okay. Well, hey, listen, if you want to chat about anything else ever, if anything else ever comes up, you can shoot me a DM
I
and I can always
do.
drag
I'm
you on it.
sorry I made you sad. My intention was the exact opposite.
All right. Well, listen, yeah, if any particular thing
I'm
comes up, yeah,
sorry.
feel free to shoot me a message. We
Please
can,
stay in touch.
yeah, well, you always got my DM. So,
Okay.
all right. I'll talk to you later. Bye. I I have to go into the jungle and do DMT and reevaluate because somebody is like just like detached to like a clinically insane level. I think it's diagnosable. One of us, when I'm having these conversations, one of us has to be medically crazy. I think it can't be. It's something is not happening. I mean, either my mind is not clicking on something or I can't, I don't even, the, wait, hold on one second. I love you. Wait, real quick. Listen, hey, I'm going to be in Nevada so we can go canvas so we can at least win this state. Sign up for it if you haven't already. Sign up sheet is going in the chat. And then also I think they're trying to fundraise a couple $1,000s more for hotels. So I'm putting that in chat as well. Hi, what's up?
Did that go as well as you thought it would?
I don't know what to. What do you? It's impenetrable. Have you ever? Wait. Do you? I know that you generally don't have like you don't do like the debater stuff or whatever. But have you ever? Do you talk to people like this on your channel or your YouTube? Do you ever like debate people like this? Do you ever get through to them, or do you do this? I guess is the first question.
No, I mean, like only on Twitter Spaces, I'll have occasional conversations with Rob Noor, but like, no, unfortunately, when people are in my replies, like blowing me up, and I give them the same opportunity you do to pop in, most people don't take me up on it for whatever reason. So no, besides like personal experiences with family and friends, and then the spaces that I have with you guys or with Pisco or with Hutch or whatever, yeah, like, so no, a bit of experience like this, but not to the same extent that you do.
What do you? I don't even know what to.
I think the only thing I would say, and I mean, obviously I think you had a different approach than usual. I think that I think the conversation was just all over the place, and
yeah, I need to. I feel rude doing it, but no, you're right. I need to be like, wait, but it's so aggressive when I do it. Like I'm shutting down, but I need to be like, wait. We have to agree on this one thing because, and I think this is intentional by them. No, I'm so sorry. It's not intentional. I think it's an emotional reaction to discomfort. Is they try to squirm away. Yeah, they try to squirm away so much when they are. When they're in an area that I think they're uncomfortable in. And I think that's why the conversation pivots so much. I'm like, wait, well, what about like this thing? Like, well, you can't always know that. And then it just goes somewhere else. But I think that's like an attempt to escape the discomfort of being held down in an area and being like, hey, we need to talk about this fact.
No, because even like the economy, like at one point she was talking about, let's get back to the policy. But then when you'd finally indulge her and talk about a particular thing, like she would say wage gains, then she wanted to move to tariffs. And then it was like, she wanted to avoid being cornered by you, which I understand. I mean, like if I were in a debate with somebody, I wouldn't want to feel cornered either. But I imagine that's probably why that's going to be a huge reason why you didn't find this conversation particularly productive.
It's because we didn't just sit down on a single fact and be like, let's look up this 66% number. We need to go and find exactly what you're talking about.
And even if you moved, well, I was going to say, even if you moved off to a different topic within the conversation, you're the sort of person that we want to focus on a particular disagreement and let's explore it at least for a while, linearly, Socratically. And then if eventually I'm like, okay, fine, let's talk about tariffs or whatever, you can at least say you chased her down a particular rabbit hole. Here, it was like whack-a-mole. It wasn't even like a rabbit hole. It was just one whack-a-mole after another. And I feel like it was frustrating to hear that.
Yeah, but it felt like when I was hardcore fact-checking on some things, she would eventually just say like, oh, like, you're like, that's just not true. Like, I don't think any... Right. I'm not aware of, at least. I'm not aware of anybody that said that the Trump tariffs were successful in any size, shape, or form.
No, and as a matter of fact, I was trying to, which I understand you had a lot going on, but I was trying to throw shit at you just in case like you wanted to refer to something and not try to fact check her in real time. But I mean, most economic consensus at the time was that the Trump tariffs, like he also had to subsidize a shit ton. I can't remember how many billions of dollars of farmers at the time that he was imposing these tariffs on China. And there were reports saying that it was the equivalent of one of the largest tax increases in, American history and stuff like that. So because of the imposition on American consumers. So no, I'm not aware of that either.
And then what is this claim that she made about this Biden 2,000 a day border thing?
So I don't know the particulars of the EO, but President Biden instituted these executive orders back like 3 or 4 months ago, and I think maybe longer than that. And border crossings have dropped precipitously, I think by 50% within the past like 3 months. I don't know what the exact figure is, but even if she's right on the 2,000 that he just arbitrarily by executive order, shut off asylum, there's a reason
there's no way that the president has the authority to do that.
Right, precisely.
That's why I want to see what they're talking about here. What this is even, yeah.
Right. That's precisely the point. It's entirely possible that Biden's executive orders are illegal. Like that's the whole point. This was a break glass in case of emergency thing. That's why Biden wanted, federal statutory law by way of Congress to deal with the border, because if he just imposed it, everyone said impose executive order. Okay, well Trump did that. Trump did that repeatedly throughout his presidency, and it got struck down very often, including his southern border related executive orders by even conservative judges. That's why there were 2 government shutdowns on Trump's watch. And both of them, in part, were related to border legislation because his executive orders kept getting struck down, and so he wanted to beef it up with congressional law. Because this, executive orders have the full force of law, but they are by far the least legally tenable. Like a judge is much more likely to strike down a federal or a presidential executive order than federal law. So even if she's right on the numbers, it's entirely possible that Biden is violating the law in so doing, and there are legal challenges right now to those EOs. So it didn't even really address the point. It's like, Biden may have took legally dubious action to cut border crossings. But even to your point, you were like, well, the Border Patrol Union, wanted, they endorsed this bipartisan legislation.
Yeah, but what was the person on the Twitter space last time? And they were like, well, the Border Patrol Union doesn't even know what it means.
Right.
Yeah.
Which didn't make any sense because obviously they would look for any reason to shit talk this, right? Especially because it's Biden backed bipartisan legislation. They would do anything in their power to shit talk it. It just the conversation was all over the place. The thing I was hoping somebody in chat said she answered this. I don't think she did. I didn't hear it. I don't recall her saying if she thinks Trump won or lost the election. Number one. And number two, what sort of evidence, like what credible reason would Trump have to believe that he won the election? And then number three, if you think Trump lost the election and that there's no real evidence Trump had to believe the election was stolen, why would you vote for him?
This was the thing that I also wanted to do too. And I hate to be like a one-trick pony for the J6 stuff. I mean, we could do anything if they wanted to. Like, we could go to any other topics. J6 happens to be the one I know the most about. We go to another one if they wanted to. But it's like, we can sit on this issue, okay? You're telling me, because what she was basically saying was, Trump thought that he lost the election, and I genuinely believe that he thought that. And then she didn't want to own this part. She was saying, basically, therefore, he had a right to try to steal the election on J6.
Right.
Like, is that really what we, like, that's insane. You know that's
right.
Insane, right? That's insane.
If I genuinely believe that I should have the right to murder somebody, you would never give me permission to violate the law to murder somebody regardless. Like, your personal beliefs are immaterial.
Yeah, or if you make those excuses, I pointed this out yesterday. I don't know if I was talking to you while I was doing it. If you make those excuses, you can't simultaneously justify the action and say it didn't happen at the same time. Like,
right.
and conservatives do this. They will justify a revolution. They'll justify an insurrection, but then they'll say it wasn't an insurrection. They'll say they tried to steal the election. There was decent evidence of a lot of voter fraud. He really did think the election was stolen. And then it's like, okay, so then he did try to, well, no, he didn't try to do any of that. Of course not. Wait, but you just said he legitimately thought it was all like, yeah, they justify it and then say it didn't happen. Yeah.
Right, because they don't want to be pinned down on a particular position. And the other thing, there's a question that I think I sent it to you. There's a question that you usually ask conservatives, I think would have been really apropos here. And now I'm blanking on it. I was spamming it in chat. But yeah, I'm familiar with her because she was on Bill Maher like about a year ago or something like that. And I was like, man, she is awfully Trump apologetic. That was my first familiarity with her. So I was stunned when she was like, oh, I'm a leftist.
Yeah, but I knew that was bullshit. That's why I immediately asked her. I was like, oh, wait, hold on. So you're going to support Kamala Harris, right? She's like, I'm undecided. It's like, okay, you're voting for Trump 100%.
And now I'm curious. I'm curious what her Twitter page looks like in reference to, because you can look up Trump and it's just one Trump apologetic after another. I'm curious what she has to say on the vice president. I imagine it's very critical. Maybe I'm wrong. But
he picked Pence because Pence was a conservative. But he picked Vance because what?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Hey, Stephen.
Or what's up?
Hey. So I just stumbled upon this debate you were having. I didn't know you were having one. But then I saw that woman, and I was talking with someone. We were in BC watching this.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't have picked out her name if you had asked me to beforehand, but I had seen her before, and like my immediately thought was like, oh, isn't she like MAGA? Right? Like this is my impression of her from what I had seen previously, but it was just a vague impression. So I had like looked her up while you guys were having a debate and realized she was a liberal writer. But I was also shocked at the end when she said that she was a leftist. I think that's part of the reason is that language is kind of loose. Like what exactly is a leftist? But like, I didn't get that feeling from your debate. I thought what was the heart of it for me was the idea of who was running the country, right? I like that line that you had said, like, I feel like you're ruling the country. And I think that she took it as like a moral indictment of herself. And at least I didn't interpret it that way. Maybe you meant it that way, but I didn't interpret it that way.
That she's ruining the country?
Yeah.
It was personal. That was a personal comment. Yes, I did intend it that way.
All right. Okay, well then excuse me. But when the reason why I was nodding my head along with you, right, was not to personally attack her. But it was like if you can't we can't agree on these facts, right? If you can present a whole list of data and like we can all exist in a parallel track, and we can try. We're using the same words with each other, and in the end, what you're doing is excusing awful behavior, right? You're excusing awful behavior from this individual being Trump. Then, yeah, this causes the destruction. This is actually dangerous. If we can't agree, we're talking about a leader of the nation. We can't understand. Hey, this person did this destructive thing. or even agree that maybe this person did something beneficial to the country. Like when I see us fraying, I see us fraying because we literally can't communicate.
Yeah, I agree. It's bad. Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, I just felt like that was like at least for me. I know there's other parts to the debate, but that was the heart of that for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Steven, I just sent you a link. I just deafened myself just to make sure it was the correct link. Watch this real quick. It's about 1 minute and 30 seconds.
I don't know if I can. I'm sorry. I clicked it real quick and I just read the first sentence and I had to close it immediately. Am I going to get triggered reading or listening to this?
Yeah, I was hoping you would be able to catch this before the conversation ended, but you should listen to it. Listen to it. Do it. Do it.
You know what the fuck? You know what the easy ask for her is? Who do you think there were more assassination attempts on? Hamas leadership from Israel or Israeli leadership from Hamas? I mean, it's such a stupid.
Right. Well, I mean, again, like, and here's the frustrating thing: we don't know how many assassination attempts there have been against Vice President Harris or President Biden because the Secret Service doesn't always disclose it. We do know, and there's shit that we've forgotten about. There was a Trump supporter, I think it was last year, who was actually shot to death by Secret Service when they went to investigate threats he made against President Biden, and it resulted in a shootout where they killed him. You had Trump retruth Obama's address last year as well, and a Trump fan parked his van outside of Obama's D.C. address and was going to live stream murdering President Obama, and was arrested by, I think it was Secret Service. Like, there are all kinds of unhinged shit that we can tie directly to Trump, to say nothing of the fact that we don't know how many attempts have been made against Biden and Harris. But please watch this. It's just
there was people forget this, okay? There was a guy that mailed out like 16 bombs to people that he thought were enemies of Donald Trump. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
Because it's been mind wiped. It was at the end of Trump's presidency. This has been like mind wiped from the American public. Like, nobody remembers any of these things. I don't understand how they can get away with this. And like nobody, just as a real quick thing, I'm sorry. Cesar Sayak, who mailed pipe bombs to Trump critics, is sentenced to 20 years in prison. He sent the bombs to prominent Democrats, setting off a frenzied investigation that unnerved the country before last year's midterm elections. This is in 2019, okay?
Right.
Fervent supporter of President Trump, who rattled the nation last fall when he sent homemade pipe bombs to former President Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and other prominent Democrats, was sentenced on Monday to 20 years in prison. He pled guilty in March to mailing 16 pipe bombs to people he considered to be Mr. Trump's enemies. The FBI said the devices were packed with powder from fireworks, fertilizer, a pool chemical, and glass fragments that would function as shrapnel, but they would not have worked as designed. In the end, the flaws in the bomb's designs were critical to a federal judge's decision to give Mr. Sayak 20 years in prison rather than the life sentence prosecutors requested. Like, nobody cares. Like, none of this matters, right? Like,
no, and
do you think that she would respond with like, "Hey, there were two assassination attempts, and the second one was from a more left-leaning individual"?
Was he?
The guy in question, he was pro-Ukraine, right? So he was pro-Ukraine, which I guess implies that he's more on the left. He used to be a Trump voter, or he said he was a Trump supporter in 2016. He had residence in Hawaii and North Carolina, and in the Democratic primary in 2024, he did vote in the Democratic primary. So he has a mixed record. But he's obviously anti-Trump now, but he says he used to be a Trump supporter then. But yeah, but again, the problem is, let's just, Steven's gonna hate this, but again, just for the sake of argument, let's just grant the premise that guy was a lefty. It doesn't, if you stack up all of the acts of political violence conducted by quote unquote lefties against prominent Republicans and vice versa, it's still probably a 3-to-1 ratio of Trump supporters making terroristic threats or assassination attempts against Democrats compared to the opposite. But they don't care. There's always an asymmetry. It takes basically like 10 conservatives going after Democrats to equal 1 Democrat going after a conservative. And it's just an untenable ratio.
I 100% agree, right? But like, and I don't want to speak for this as a Batya individual.
Yeah.
But like for
she's a leftist.
Others,
she's a leftist, Prime. Just want you to know that. Yeah, she's a leftist.
She's one of mine. So I 100% agree with what you just said, right? But on the other side of it, like, what are you consuming in terms of media, right? Like, the media on the other side says that both of these assassinations were done by left-leaning individuals, right? And then this gets replayed in a way that, just like Destiny just pointed out, the Caesar guy, right? That he was like in a van that was plastered with like Trump slogans, right? That doesn't get replayed in the same way, right? That he was in the news for a bit, but he disappears. And so, like, even if you're not like necessarily a Trump supporter, but if you just like take all these things into osmosis, right? I think a normie might come to the conclusion, yeah, you see that on both sides, right? And they'll say, hey, the rhetoric on the Democratic side is just as divisive, right? And so we have to lower the temperature all across. It evens out for them in a way that like is unfair in the way I think you're describing.
Yeah, but she doesn't even go that far. She says in that clip, which Stephen, please watch the clip. It's going to be wildly entertaining for you and for everybody. Your audience is going to love it to see you react in real time. You want to go ahead and do it now?
Sure.
We'll wait.
Okay.
Yeah.
I really want somebody to explain this to me. If this is a problem that is shared by both sides, how come only one person is getting shot at repeatedly? About a third of Democrats admit to pollsters that they wish that the assassination attempts had succeeded. The bloodlust on the side that casts itself as the victims of stochastic terrorism again and again and again. And at least the first time around, they pretended that they were upset that somebody tried to kill Trump. But this time around, they just skipped over that step. I don't know if you noticed that. But the entire Democratic elite as a class went straight to blaming Trump's rhetoric for almost getting himself killed. It is astonishing. And what is going on there is victimhood in Democratic culture is currency. And so you can never...
Victimhood is currency. Remember, Donald Trump is hunted by the deep state. Donald Trump is hunted by the Republicans. Donald Trump is backstabbed by everybody close to him because they all care about the bureaucracy. All the companies are against Donald Trump. All the countries are against Donald Trump. All of the politicians are against Donald Trump. All of the state governors are against Donald Trump. All of the parties in all the states are against Donald Trump. All of the voting process are against Donald Trump. But the Democrats are the victims, by the way.
Allow your opponent or your enemy to be acknowledged as a victim because that is to suggest that they have moral authority. That's how their brains work. And so they sit there enraged that Trump is actually the victim of these, almost victim of these horrific crimes. They literally have like victim envy of the fact that their insane followers keep trying to kill him. It is so appalling.
Maybe she's just a Russian paid person.
Well, it's funny. I'm curious if she knew about some of the spicy things you said after the first attempt on Trump, given that she said this. She was being very, she was trying to ingratiate herself with you, obviously.
I didn't even know she had any idea who I was at all. So I was kind of surprised when, you know.
Well, you are Biden's strongest soldier. I mean,
well,
but
Israel's
it is
strongest
funny.
soldier for her, but yeah.
Yeah, and maybe what she believes is like a close alliance on that particular issue will soften your edges for Trump in her eyes. But I don't know. The other thing, two other things that she said that I think you should really contemplate. Number one, didn't she say she admires Marjorie Taylor Greene? I was actually surprised to hear that.
Crazy. That shit was crazy.
How? Really? And she's like, well, she used to be QAnon. And then people do this talking point too, where they're like, well, didn't some of the stuff end up being true? You know that, actually, hold on, I'm sorry. I'm trying to remember because all the things swirl together in my mind. Was Epstein even part of the QAnon stuff? Do you know?
No.
Because I thought that Epstein came way later. I thought the QAnon stuff was just Podesta, child porn, Hillary Clinton, satanic sex rituals, and the pizza. I don't think Epstein was even part of the original fucking QAnon shit. That was like Hillary Clinton stuff. Like...
But it got absorbed into it. Like, it perfectly matched the things they were saying, though. That's the thing, you know, right? So, like, once it comes along, then it becomes
just like the P. Diddy stuff, and
else.
everything matches everything, and everything is evidence for everything, and I guess...
Yeah, that was legitimately stunning. Like, again, I had a pretty low opinion of her prior to that, but I didn't know that she admired Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene, again, that's the other thing. Just have this in your back pocket. She's the ultimate Trump card when it comes to rhetoric. You don't even have to cite Trump yourself. If they're like, oh, give me a non-Trump example. Not that you have to. Marjorie Taylor Greene has repeatedly, publicly, explicitly, in text and on camera, referred to the Democratic Party as an evil party of warmongers and pedophiles. Right? AOC has never said that sort of shit about the Republican Party.
Yeah, but then the fact that she equates like Biden's misspeak of like, if you don't vote for me, you're not black. She's like, that's the same thing as Trump saying a Mexican federal judge should recuse himself from my case. I'm sorry, I keep saying Mexican judge. It's not true. It's an American federal judge should recuse himself from my case because his parents are from Mexico. Like,
well, and remind me, so I think, if you guys correct me if I'm wrong, I remember Biden caught a lot of flack for that, but I'm trying to remember the context. Wasn't he trying to say basically not that, how do I say
he was
this?
trying to say, like,
Basically
if you don't vote for me, you're not supporting the black community, basically. He was trying to say that he was better for the black community. That's basically what he was saying.
I thought he was saying that he had such strong support among the black community that anyone who had doubts about him were probably white people.
Sure,
like,
or that might be true, yeah. But
yeah.
he wasn't literally saying you're going to turn white, or if you don't vote for me, you're like a race traitor or whatever, right? He's
right,
saying,
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing that the mens rea part of the discussion I thought was really interesting. That like we can't, like you were trying to put her down on this to say obviously we don't need people to confess to understand they're lying. One, the thing that something that you didn't bring up, but happened like a few weeks ago, is that Donald Trump on stage literally said we lost the last election by a hair. Right?
No, it's never, ever. It's never worth bringing that stuff up because they'll always say, well, when he says they lost, they lost because of vote rigging. It's never worth bringing that stuff up. I know what you're saying, but
no. Yeah, I understand.
But they'll always say that when he says they lost by a hair, they lost because it was rigged. That's what they'll always go back to. So it's not,
yeah. Yeah. But this idea that we can't, that simply because he keeps repeating the lie, we have to believe that he believes the lie, even though there's quotes among his aides. I think in the new book War, I believe in the new book War, there's quotes from his aides saying that we told him at the time, right, that you lost the election, and that he had every piece of information to say that he lost the election, but that he might, in his mind, have thought that he won the election. Like that's just like if that's the standard, then we can't be sure to convict anyone of anything.
Yeah, I know, it's always right? Well, but except on the other side, we can instantaneously know when Biden is doing something wrong, or when Hillary Clinton is doing something wrong, or when, yeah. Oh, and then when she was like, "Oh, I don't think that any of the DNC hacks affected the election at all. I don't think the laptop story affected the election at all. People are just these perfect policy machines." I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah. So a couple of things about that. Yeah, the false equivalence she was trying to draw there, which you did a good job of pushing back on. Number one, that Hillary first called Donald Trump privately, as candidates often do, and privately conceded to him. Then she went out, conducted a press conference, attended by hundreds of people in person, went on live TV. She formally, publicly conceded, number two. Number three, she showed up at the motherfucker's inauguration, right, which is another major step in respecting the peaceful transfer of power. She didn't try to sue her way into the White, because that's the other thing too. I mean, this whole, avail yourself of your legal options. That goes both ways. Does that mean you support? Should Hillary Clinton have tried to sue her way into the White House the way Trump tried to? She didn't conspire with Vice President Biden or then President Obama to overturn the results of the election, or have Biden just unilaterally toss the votes out. Yes, some Democrats in Congress did try to object to Trump's win, but there weren't any formal objections, because in order to have a formal objection, you got to get members of both.
And the ECA, you need
chambers.
one member of the House and one member of the Senate. Yeah,
precisely. And they couldn't get it. Mm-hmm. And Biden even went viral at the time because he told them to cut it out. He's like, it's over. It's done. So just a wild asymmetry there. Now, it's true in 2018, to your point, years later, she called Trump an illegitimate president. And I'm sorry, like, you can say that language is irresponsible, but I just think it's eminently more defensible. Like, what she was trying to get at is, like, he doesn't have a popular mandate from the people. He won by way of the Electoral College, and, foreign adversaries were pulling for him to win. Even if you take issue with the rhetoric, she only said it a few times.
And even if you take issue with the rhetoric, there wasn't all the criminal processes tied along with it.
Right. No, 100%.
I really want her to give us examples of the DOJ being weaponized by Biden.
We didn't even get to that, but it was just going to be that all the prosecutions are political, and then it's just going to be all the dumb talking points relating to that.
And then you'll talk about the New Jersey senator, was it Mendez, being prosecuted.
Menendez, Henry Cuellar, a Democrat in Congress, Hunter Biden. Again, like the Hunter Biden thing really is amazing. I just keep going back to
I hate Pisco every day. He sucks off Merrick Shitland. I'm glad he lost his Supreme Court pick. Oh, we needed an independent counsel for the Biden document. I'm glad that he appointed a special counsel. Unbelievable. And that Merrick and you know what? Where's the Biden leaks? Where Biden was also roasting Garland for waiting for dragging his feet so long? Yeah, A, hell yeah. That there was no need to be that. But Merrick Garland was falling into the same trap that the liberal media falls into, is this obsession with trying to appear as unbiased. And now, what do all the conservatives that we debate say? Well, the reason why Merrick Garland waited so long was so that it would be timed more nicely with the election year. Right. He just waited for him to say that he was going to run for election again, right? So if you try to investigate too soon, you're obviously being political because he was just in office. If you wait a while, you're just waiting for him to run for office again. Like just do your job.
No, 100%. Like, so my criticism of Garland is I think he has a judicial temperament, and like legal scholars will tell you, obviously in terms of roles, there's a difference between a prosecutor and a judge, and a prosecutor is an adversary by nature. Their goal is to pursue you, to prosecute you, to get you convicted. They're not supposed to be quote unquote even tempered. That's the judge's job, right? And so Garland was a prosecutor, successful prosecutor for years, but then he was a federal judge. And part of his appeal when Obama nominated him to the Supreme Court was the fact that he was such an even-tempered centrist judge. He thought that even McConnell would be willing to accept him as a replacement for Scalia. Obviously, that turned out not to be true because McConnell's mission in life was to, f over Obama. But yeah, I think it was a colossal mistake to make Merrick Garland the Attorney General. I don't think the guy is stupid. I think he's very smart. I think in probably a different time, he would be a great Attorney General. Because, by the way, they still have an enormous success rate under Merrick Garland, but he is so goddamn slow. But he's also so goddamn slow in a particular direction. To your point, Stephen, it wasn't just that he appointed a special counsel to investigate President Biden. He appointed one immediately. Like, it took a year. They were playing footsie with Trump for more than a year over the classified documents. He took forever to bring charges for January 6th. There was credible reporting from the Washington Post, and I think others. I think the New York Times has done a more recent version as well, involving DOJ officials, where they're like, "Yeah, Garland's concern is he doesn't want the DOJ to be seen as weaponized." Now, to your point, it doesn't matter. The polls on that have not changed. Republicans still think the DOJ is weaponized. So Merrick Garland accomplished absolutely nothing. That is, I might actually kill Pisco in a video game when I see him. Hold on. Just so that I have all my names straight, because I didn't read these reports. The special counsel that Merrick Garland appointed for Biden was it was John Robert Hur.
Oh, it was her. Okay.
Well, so Hunter Biden was David Weiss.
Yes.
And
wait,
John
the her is that report that Pisco is obsessed with, right?
Yeah.
Hold on. Because I haven't read this in the Mueller investigation. Okay, when all the information from that was published, were there any facts about that published about Donald Trump's behavior, or any deposition with Trump, or anything having to do with anything that Trump himself said?
Well, Trump wouldn't sit down for deposition. He'd only answer questions, I think, like written statements. I can't remember if written statements were included in the file. I wouldn't be surprised if there were, but no, there was nothing like the characterization that like the editorializing.
Because you notice that these special counsels where there's not even charges filed end up destroying, right, a lot of these Democratic, right? Because because it happened with Hillary Clinton as well, right?
Right.
There were no charges, and the FBI and Comey came out, and they said a whole bunch of crazy shit.
Right. Well, that was what pissed off so many, not just Democrats, but also legal scholars like Andrew Weissman and
I wonder if Pisco's going to defend it. He will. I wonder if Pisco would defend her publishing publicly that report. I wonder if he would defend it. And also, wait, hold on. Someone said because of an OLC memo, Mueller did not look at Donald Trump directly. That's my understanding, because I thought there was a whole thing about President Trump being charged with a crime, so if they couldn't climb up or whatever. Yeah, go ahead, go.
Well, no, kind of. So the OLC memo from, I think it was the Nixon administration, says you can't indict a sitting president. That's why Mueller declined to bring charges. But he also found credible evidence that Trump, credibly obstructed justice. The only reason he didn't bring that charge was because of the OLC memo. But I am 78% sure and again, someone in DGG can fact check me because I'm not in a position to, that Mueller did send questions off to Trump, and Trump gave a few written responses. Because I mean, President Biden's a sitting president too, and he was also questioned by Robert Hur, but I think it was also voluntary. So maybe.
Could you imagine if Hillary had a single person in her camp like Roger f***ing Stone?
Yeah.
One person like that?
Yeah.
No,
that's
you're
what I'm
lying.
saying.
You're wrong.
Like,
You couldn't imagine it. You don't even know how unbelievably destroyed the Conservative Party would make this country. You can't. You're lying. You can't imagine it. None of us can imagine the destruction. Can you imagine if Biden or anybody on the Democratic side would have tried to hamper with any of the investigations? Hold on, wait. My timelines. I'm sorry, COVID just wiped my mind and everything. The Hillary Clinton ran against Donald Trump in 2016.
Correct.
So the Comey investigation and all of that happened under Obama. So can you imagine if Obama had called Comey into his office and tried to give him orders like Donald Trump did? Or if
Texas would be seceding from the union.
Or if Obama was tweeting out to his attorney general saying, "Why the f*** did you recuse yourself from this f***ing case?" like Donald Trump did to Jeff Sessions?
Right.
Bro, I can't. It's not tenable. You can't. This is not a world you can live in, right?
No.
But part of the problem is that Democrats are comfortable playing by those rules. So, hello, Jessiah. I've never met you, but nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, buddy.
You had an interesting perspective calling Merrick Garland judicious, right? I hadn't heard it put in that way, right? So I had a good judicious mindset. But I would have said it, I'd say differently, that this mindset is very liberal. It's very Obama era, right? It's, hey, we got to be bipartisan, and I don't like it when Fox News yells at me. And so,
well, bipartisan, when he says judicial mindset, just to be clear, a lot of people view court and all of that as kind of like the same machine, like the judge, the prosecutor, the cops are all kind of the same thing. A judge is supposed to be bipartisan. He's supposed to have the temperament such that you present me the facts, show me what it is, and I will rule in accordance with the law. Whereas a prosecutor is supposed to go out and kind of get shit done. Like, I'm going to prove this fucking case. Okay, we're going to do this shit. And to say that Merrick Garland, I don't necessarily think, I understand what you're saying in terms of like liberals are trying to play by the rules more, but I think it's just more that Garland is a tad too passive, I guess, except when it comes to appointing a special counsel to go after the goddamn documents that were found in Biden's garage and then reported on their own accord to the what the fuck is the point? Why did we even appoint a special counsel for Biden if they can't even charge him with a crime? I thought we couldn't charge sitting presidents with a crime. What the fuck was even the point? Sorry.
Democrats will appoint a Republican special counsel. Democrats will say, hey, I want a Republican within my cabinet. Republicans won't say anything like that. Right?
True.
Like there's an imbalance in the perspective.
Fuck, Donald Trump doesn't even like most Republicans.
I mean,
that's insane. Yeah, there's only sycophants only.
Yeah, that's one thing. When to Prime's point here, I think it's important. That's one thing I ranted at Pisco a couple of weeks ago during one of his live chats. That one of the things that excites me potentially, I don't know if she'll go through with this, but if she wins, one of the things I'm excited about the most is it seems unlikely that Merrick Garland will remain Attorney General. And I think that a future Attorney General needs to like really revamp the DOJ, like some of these norms, like this idea, that's a big one, that only Republicans can investigate Republicans and Democrats. Democrats can't investigate shit. No, f*** you. As a matter of fact, as far as I'm concerned, I would make it like Republicans, you're not investigating shit for a couple of election cycles. Democrats will investigate Democrats and Democrats will investigate Republicans. And if you don't like it, go f*** yourself.
Even when they get offered the ability to investigate, they won't f***ing do it. Like when McCarthy and all the rest of the 2-inch Republicans in the House are like, I don't want to be in the J6 committee because you don't want a guy who's literally being accused of crimes to be a part of the investigation. It's actually unhinged. Or when Donald Trump, when there were Democrats involved in the 2016 and the bipartisan voter fraud investigation, except the Republicans were holding onto all of the information that they had, and when the Democrats had to sue in court who were part of that committee to get access to the information, then Donald Trump disbands it so they don't have to turn any of it over. That's insane. It's unhinged. It's unbelievable. It's unreal, dude. Okay. Sorry. I'm good. I'm back.
No, I think this stuff's important because like right now the presidential election is effectively a coin flip. Republicans are favored to win the Senate, and this is the scary thing. Like Lindsey Graham went on Hannity the other day, and he was having like one of his Lindsey Graham meltdowns where he's all glassy eyed and his voice is quivering. And he's like, we're getting outspent 3 to 4 to 5 to 1 in some states. He's like, what we need is a Republican Senate. He said he said the quiet part out loud. He's like, if we get a Republican Senate, we could have a conservative supermajority for generations to come with 2 or perhaps even 3 Supreme Court justices. So they're banking on Alito and Thomas retiring, which of course they will, and like Sotomayor tipping over because she's a diabetic who has to walk around with a medic at all times. She's like 70 years old.
She's being selfish, yeah. 100%.
Yeah, so like think about that. That's a really scary thing. People need to take this election so fucking seriously because Donald Trump may walk away at the end of his second term having appointed 6 Supreme Court justices. That is not just a MAGA supermajority, or excuse me, a conservative supermajority. That's a MAGA supermajority.
The only thing I will say that would be good about 6 Supreme Court justices is probably the best chance we have of repealing the 19th Amendment, and women just need to not be involved in politics at all. We're going to lose 2 Supreme Court justice women because of that. It was a mistake in the first place.
Even
wait,
because of
I'm
like
so sorry.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Sotomayor.